The last slide I have is a slide which gives you those verses by William Koelpin, who, as I said, is a depression sufferer. Mike, could you hand these out now? I got a few minutes remaining. I'm going to open it up to discussion, to questions, and if you have no questions, I do have questions on the back page there that we can look at. But does anybody have any questions that they'd like to address? Yes, go ahead.
What do you do when that loved one who's battling depression doesn't want to?
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder?
What do you do when that loved one who's battling depression doesn't want to go see a doctor?
What do you do when the loved one who is battling depression does not want to go to see a doctor? Boy, that's really a tough one. I think part of it, in my experience, has been the stigma that is attached to it, that maybe I'm going to have to admit that I'm going through something. And I think what I would do is find other family members who can help you encourage the person to go, and maybe somebody who has gone through it. I'm going to be real transparent here and say a relative of mine got together in a family gathering, and that relative of mine is a person I've been encouraging to go to a doctor about it for a long time and never did. Ended up talking to a cousin who was on medication for depression and said to this person, "You mean you haven't gone yet?" It really helped then that person to realize somebody else had gone. I think the stigma is a part of it.
You never mentioned anything about seasonal depression.
Sad. Because I lived in Arizona, we never had anything like that there. The question is, you never mentioned anything like seasonal affective disorder. I will only say that it is a fact, it happens, and I don't know that the symptoms are a whole lot different from it. Fortunately, there are ways to deal with that. You can go home to the promised land and be where the sunshine is. No, but that, I don't mean to be trite here, but that's what usually, there are pastors who have confessed to having that struggle and have asked for a call and have moved to areas where they don't have a problem with it. Yes?
My late son suffered from bipolar
Yes.
depression, and one of the things that affected him was like the seasonal depression.
Lack of sunlight and all that.
Yes, and we purchased a cough light, and for $20, $40,
The full spectrum.
it's a full spectrum light. Put it over your chair when you sit to watch TV or read a book. And
I appreciate that. The thought mentioned here is that there are lamps that you can buy that give you the vitamins that you would get from the sun, and I think that I've heard of other people doing that and that it helps.
and
Yes.
they're available just about any place.
Not very expensive. Oh, back here.
I'm just curious if there is an attachment to the generational differences. I think of your father, probably one of the greatest generations in some of the millennials that we face today. Is there a difference in, I guess, the values that those generations have been raised within?
The question is there a difference in the values that the greatest generation and the millennial generation have raised in? And I think that you're attaching to that would cause one generation to have more depression or less. Is that what you're trying to say?
Correct. I just think of my own father growing up as part of the greatest generation, and it was truly stigmatized. You wouldn't admit if you were going through anything. You never showed weakness.
Okay, there is something that may be to the fact that maybe in an older generation there was more stigma attached, but now I'll refer to Pastor Hankey if you could mention something. Only the fact that what he told me about is that in the newspaper, it's almost like an epidemic with younger people now. Whether they feel more open about admitting it, I'm not sure. Can you add anything?
I think that in this generation that we're dealing with now, the stigma that our parents suffered with is not nearly what it was anymore. In fact, my daughter's a PA in the emergency room, and she regularly will have parents bring their 9, 10, 11-year-old kids and say, I want them on antidepressants. It is run-of-the-mill common, and that's a parenting issue, grant you, but there just is access to the diagnosis and the treatment. It's just hard to get to it that these parents or these young people, you know, it's 3 months before you can get an appointment, and that's where Fox Cities is really trying to bite that bullet and say, we really need to get mental health providers to take advantage of it, or these families that are finally willing to face it and admit it and deal with it.
Thank you, Pastor Hank. I really appreciate that. I will say that in some of the people that I have, like the person I just referred to in answering the other question, that was a millennial trying to encourage them. So there's still with some stigma attached, and it's maybe not as much with the younger generation. Yes?
Just a couple things related to this. Is there more situations of depression that's linked to drug use, like heroin, for instance? This is something I've heard, and maybe that's more the problem, that there's more depression among young people because there's more drug use among them than there was with the great generation.
The question is, could depression be linked to drug use? And I think the direction of the question is, could drug use be more the cause of the depression? I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I am going to tell you that a lot of people are self-medicating depression with drugs and alcohol. That is scary, how many people are doing that. So the reverse is certainly true, but I'm not sure about that being the cause. Yes, back here.
I think that depression isn't necessarily more prevalent. I think it's just better diagnosed, and that's why those numbers are skyrocketing, because now we're more aware. I don't think that drug use would be a direct cause of any depression.
Okay, the comment is made that depression is not necessarily on an increase, but it's being better diagnosed. People.
Obviously unconfirmed, can't know heart attack.
Okay. I showed statistics before that said men who meet the criteria for clinical depression are 2 to 3%, and women are 7 to 14 or something like that. And one of the questions I had in there, I really believe this. I believe men actually are suffering just as much depression as women. It's just that I'm going to be a man and not admit that. See, and if people are becoming more open with it, praise the Lord for that. But then let's deal with it. Yes, Ron.
You made reference a few times to this book. Could you repeat the title and the author?
Yes, I can. The name of the book is New Light on Depression. It's in the handout. It's on a footnote in the handout. And the authors are David Biebel, B-I-E-B-E-L, and Harold Koenig, K-O-E-N-I-G. One is a pastor, the other is an M.D. Question was, what book have I been referencing? Over here.
I'm looking at the question you have on the back in number 10. All pastors are able to counsel someone who's dealing with depression. You kind of referenced that before, and I would ask, is there anything being done in the synod to help train pastors to better counsel their members on depression so that there isn't a question of faith?
Okay, the question is anything being done in our church body to guide pastors in handling this so that they don't question faith? I don't know what's being said at the seminary is my first answer. I do believe that there is an increased awareness of the fact that this is something that you need professional help for dealing with. I think there's an increased awareness among the ministerium for that. Now, are there always going to be maybe some people who have a problem? Very possibly. We got to just keep informing it. I don't know what they're teaching at the seminary, but I tend to think they're making people more aware that this is not something that you want to attribute to a person's weak faith. I know some of the professors there have had people in their family they've had to deal with it, so I would assume that they're approaching it that way. I'm down to, I don't know, almost time up here. Those, if I don't get to your questions, remember we have a session around lunch that we can talk. Go ahead, back here.
Regarding the question that was just asked, one of the sponsors for the event is the Christian Family Solutions. I know that pastors are getting a little more training regarding mental issues, but they're strongly encouraged to send their congregants to Christian Family Solutions because they have the tools to help people
Yes, the comment is that Christian Family Solutions is one of the sponsors of this event, and I mentioned Wisconsin Lutheran Child Family Service, which is Christian Family Solutions, and I cannot speak highly enough of the fact that that is there, and what a wonderful blessing of God that is for our people. Okay, Mike, I'm done. I want to just thank all of you, and again, if you have other questions, please join us for lunch. We can talk about them, or if you want to speak to me privately beforehand, we can do that. Thank you.